Hello and welcome to this repair tutorial, and today we're going to look at a NAD and the model number is 350. In terms of general specifications, power output is 60 watts times 2 into 8 ohm speakers. Frequency response is 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Total harmonic distortion is 0.03%. Input sensitivity is 325 millivolts. Your line inputs are disc, video, tuner, aux, tape 1 and tape 2. You can also bypass the tone control circuits via the tone defeat switch on the front. The amplifier supports bass, treble and balance controls. It also has 2 preamplifier outputs, headphone socket on the front for private listening, and as is common with all of these amplifiers, you have a 12 volt trigger input, and this is where you can have the amplifier sitting in standby mode, and then this trigger input could be connected to multiple NAD devices, and with a single trigger would turn on all of the devices from standby mode. Again, on the rear we have a soft clipping switch. Operated, it will illuminate the LED on the front to show that it's active. And then in terms of dimensions, height, width and depth is 100 by 435 by 290 millimeters, and the weight of the amplifier is 7 kilograms. From new, it would also be provided with a remote control, which gives you the ability to place the amplifier into standby mode, to select the various inputs, and also operate the motorized volume control. Now, when we take a look at this photograph, what I'm showing you here is the service plate, and this is very common on all of these series of amplifiers. For this one, you pretty much get full access to the entire solder side of the circuit board, and then here you can see the service plate has been removed, and you can see the many different solder joints, and we'll sort of mention that as we go through the tutorial. Now, what was the issue with this amplifier when it came into the workshop? Well, the owner contacted me and advised that the amplifier did not turn on. So that meaning that there was no indication of power whatsoever on the amplifier. And that kind of leads us to a common issue depending on the serial number or stroke date code of the amplifier that you may have or you have in the workshop. And what I'm referring to is what I'm showing you here. So this is an extract from the service manual, and NAD issued 2 service bulletins, the information here being on one of those bulletins, and we'll cover the second one in a moment. And what it's referring to is the failure of these 100 nanofarad high frequency filter capacitors, which are rated at 63 volts. Now on the left hand side you can see that I'm pointing to a small startup transformer, and this small startup transformer provides 2 output voltages. So it provides 14 volts and also a 8 volt supply. And unfortunately what happens is that any of these small 100 nanofarad capacitors will fail short circuit, which means then that excess current is drawn through the standby stroke startup transformer, and it reaches a point in terms of temperature where the thermal fuse will operate, and then you have to replace the transformer. There's nothing further you can do, and unfortunately the transformer is now obsolete, but thankfully I've been repairing these amplifiers over a number of years, and I have a toroidal equivalent in stock, and you'll see in a moment as we go through. It's unfortunate because if your amplifier has the serial number which you see here or below, that means that the fault or the recurring issue was not identified. So if your amplifier is still working, I would advise you to get access to the power supply board and then replace these 100 nanofarad capacitors, as it says here, with Metallised Polyester Film type rated at 100 volts. And it is a sad situation for owners that when these standby transformers fail, because you're unable to source a replacement, then the amplifier has to be replaced. So here when we look from the top, what I'm showing here is the standby transformer. You can see that it's bolted to the back panel, and what I've done is I've disconnected this 3-pin connector, and this is the primary of the transformer. And what I'm interested to learn from a fault finding point of view is to identify if the winding on the primary side is open circuit, i.e. that the thermal fuse has failed. And sure enough, if you measure between the black wire and the red wire, in my case, because I'm in the UK, so it's 230 volt power, you read open circuit on your multimeter. So that tells me that this transformer has to be replaced. There's nothing I can do. The transformer is providing power to the microcontroller and its associated LED to indicate when the amplifier is in a standby mode condition. And then here you can see I've got out of stock, which is one of the small 5VA audio toroidal transformers, and in a moment you'll see how we mount that on the rear back panel. I would also point out as well that this is the power supply board, and as we go through we need to carry out some additional work on this circuit board. What the customer also advised, or the owner of the amplifier advised, was that he also required the unit to be recapped. And again, all of the electrolytic capacitors in the amplifier were replaced with Nichicon capacitors, which were 105 degrees C operating temperature rated. And then for the two large power supply capacitors, which are 2200 microfarads rated at 63 volts, I installed there Kemet. And again, these were rated at 105 degrees operating temperature. And all we're simply meaning there is we've replaced the original JH capacitors, which are well known to fail. They go open circuit in many cases, or very, very high ESR and very low in value. And sometimes you can get to the point where the amplifier just remains in standby mode. It won't actually come out of there, and the power LED is always red. And then here what we show you is this toroidal transformer mounted onto the back panel, and it's quite straightforward. I just have an anti-slip mat, and then I have the screw which comes through. So it's a single hole that you need to drill. And then what I also do is I keep the original screws which secure the starter transformer to the back panel, and we just put those through the holes and then fix some locking nuts in place, and it keeps the cosmetic appearance. And then here, as we start the recapping process, the first thing that I'm bringing to your attention, what you can see around these two large power supply capacitors, is this brown glue. So what they've done is they've used it for additional mechanical stress relief during manufacture, and then over time it dries out and it becomes conductive, and it also becomes corrosive. And what you'll find is that glue is covering a number of links on the circuit board. So what I have to do, as I'm showing here, is to remove the smoothing capacitors and then scrape away that glue. What I would always advise you to do is wear some eye protection, because often it's dried and it's like a lacquer and it can spring up and cause eye damage. And then sometimes what you can find is it still has some elasticity. So if you wish, you can just use maybe some alcohol just to soften up that glue and then scrape it away. You can't quite make it out, but in between the two capacitors there's a 10 nanofarad ceramic disc capacitor, and I've just replaced that because two leads were coated in this brown glue, so at some point of time it would have failed. And then here, really just looking at it from the power supply aspect, there was another issue which was identified, and that issue was associated with these small 100 nanofarad capacitors. Now the one which is near to the small bridge rectifier with the red circle around it, capacitor C512, had failed short circuit. The other one, where you can see there's like a burn mark right on the corner, that capacitor didn't go short circuit. It must have done at some point, but then when it was removed and then measured, it was reading in the order of megohms, so pretty much open circuit. But there has been a high amount of energy discharge from that capacitor when it failed, and you can see this here. So as you can see, there's quite a substantial flash or burn mark on the main amplifier board. And then here, if we take a photograph of the power supply stroke startup board, again you can see the same thing. You can see this sort of burning mark. So straightforward, we had to replace the capacitor, but what I've done is I've also cleaned up all of the circuit board and make sure that there was no sort of residual damage or anything like that. And then the other issue is associated with an overheating resistor. And again, if you look at the serial number as quoted on this slide, any amplifiers which had a date code prior to that will not have had this modification done. And what they're referring to is R227, and that resistor really just overheats, and they have uprated it to a 2-watt fusible resistor, and the value is 560 ohms. So here, when we look from the top, it's in the area of the protection circuit, so you can see the dedicated protection IC just to the rear, and I've just put a circle around it, and then it's showing also that it's a fusible resistor. And I've put the part number in the description for the video if you wish to source them. And then what you also need to do is to remove this switch here. So this is the soft clipping switch, and what you will find is if you desolder it from the circuit board, when you look internally, you'll find that the contacts are heavily oxidized, and this is just over time that this starts. As with any electronic circuit, you don't want to have resistance in there in the circuit which should not be present. So this is a resistive contact, and that's not how it should be. So straightforward, just take a fiberglass pencil, draw that across the contacts to clean off any oxidization, and then you can just apply some deoxide onto there just to ensure some longevity and that you have the best contact, minimal resistance in terms of switching. During the recapping exercise as well, I also took the opportunity to replace the speaker protection relay. Speaker protection relay, as with all amplifiers, with the switching contacts, they become oxidized and also pitted, and then you can then get maybe distortion at low volume or intermittent loss of sound. When you replace the capacitors on the startup power supply board and also the main amplifier board, just make note that you also need to remove the front fascia. And what I've done here is taken a photograph, and you can see that there are two electrolytic capacitors on this circuit board here. As you probably figured out, you can see a bank of LEDs. So this is the front control board. And what I've done is I've also drawn a green circle or yellow circle around the microcontroller. And you can just sort of make out as well the crystal to set the clock frequency, normally at 4 megahertz. What I would also advise you to do as well is to check every single solder joint on every circuit board. Some of these components are quite weighty, like the large electrolytic capacitors, but some are heat related. So again, you can get cracking around the solder joints. So it's just good practice just to verify all solder connections, including your headphone socket. Often you'll find cracks around there. And you'll also need to clean the user controls. So these are the bass, treble, balance and volume control potentiometers. And it's best to use a high quality contact cleaner. So in my case, I use Deoxit D5. Just go into the potentiometers and just work them backwards and forwards just to ensure that you have reliable noise-free operation. And then the final part after the recapping and the replacing of the startup standby transformer is just to carry out the full alignment. So here you would leave the amplifier running probably for about 20 to 30 minutes just to warm up. Make sure it's not in a drafty environment. And then connect your speaker rear terminals to your multimeter. And here what you're going to do, in my example, is the left channel. And then you need to get to a reading as close to 0 volts as possible. And your tolerance here is plus or minus 30 millivolts. And then once that has been done, repeat the same exercise for the right channel. And then finally, you then need to set the idle current. And what you will find is on the circuit board, there is a test point. And in this example, it's TP101 and TP102. And I would always advise you don't use your standard multimeter probe leads, because if you're going to try and use the pointed end and you accidentally slip, then you're going to cause some major damage to the amplifier. So depower it, connect your hook clips, switch the amplifier back on again, and then you can then make the adjustment by rotating the appropriate preset potentiometer. If they're a little bit twitchy, turn the amplifier off, spray Deoxit D5, just rotate the presets backwards and forwards multiple times to clean the carbon track, and then carry out your alignment. So here we just sort of step through. You can see on the rear here, we have the multimeter leads connected, and it's very low. So it's less than 0.09 millivolts. And then here you can see that we're reading on the other channel 4.26 millivolts. So it's still within tolerance, but what you can find, it's very easy to do the adjustment. So here we've done a small adjustment, and it's down to 0.56 millivolts, as low as possible. And then the next part, you can see the hook clips are connecting to these test points. And after the recap, you can see that the idle current is quite high. It's at 21.17. And what you need to do is to do the adjustment, as you saw previously. And then here we set it to 5.59.60, and that's correct. And then we then switch over to the next channel. And this one not as high as the previous channel, but still high at 10.53 millivolts. Again, just do your adjustment, and then here roughly aligned to the same as the other channel, so 5.56 millivolts. And that just makes sure that the current flowing through the output devices is correct, and the amplifier in idle mode or without any sort of amplification as such taking place, those output transistors are not running excessively hot. And then here when we look from the top of the amplifier, this is all of the work completed. So you'll also see that the amplifier has an internal clean, so any dust and debris has been removed. That's very common because it just falls through the vent grills on the top. And then on the left-hand side, you can see the Kemet capacitors mounted, and then also the toroidal. Speaker protection relay, that's the blue device just towards the rear speaker terminals. And then you also have electronic switching on this amplifier, so it uses individual relays to select the appropriate inputs, controlled via the microcontroller, and then all of the replacement Nichicon capacitors. And if we just take a sort of zoomed in view, you can see here as well that on the secondary side of the transformer, you have multiple fuses, so there's 4 fuses there. Just verify that those are okay, but because the board was completely removed, I'm just checking the solder joints and reflowing if they require to be reflowed. You can also see the bridge rectifiers, which are mounted onto the vertical heat sinks. And then here we're showing you the resistor, which was replaced, and this is a 2 watt 560 ohm resistor. And as I said, this is a flame-proof resistor as well, stroke fusible. And then here we just take another view, so zooming out a little bit. So it's quite a busy circuit board, and in terms of time, this work, to sort of recap this amplifier, probably take you about 4.5 hours. Okay, we had to do some additional work with replacing the transformer, but as I always say with any tutorial, just take the time and make the time. So if you're going to do this, I wouldn't rush it. And then as you are replacing the capacitors, just verify that you've got the correct capacitor. What I mean by that, it's very easy to maybe mix up a 4.7 microfarad capacitor with a 47 microfarad capacitor. So just verify and just make sure that if, for example, you're replacing 10 microfarad capacitors and they're 16 volt, and maybe some of the other capacitors are higher voltage, just make sure you've got the correct capacitor. It's okay to go up in voltage, but of course not down in voltage for the respective part of that circuit. And then here from the rear of the amplifier, you can see that there are 2 links. These are used to disconnect the pre-amplifier output. So here you have the main input for left and right channels. It's not uncommon sometimes for owners maybe to lose these links, and I've also seen these come up on auction websites from time to time where people who are selling them advise that the audio output is very, very low from the amplifier. Often you'll find that these links are just missing, but they can be purchased and then replaced. And then this is all of the parts that have been removed, so quite a collection. So there towards the front you can see the speaker protection relay. You can see all of these JH electrolytic capacitors, the startup stroke standby transformer on the right, and then the other large power supply capacitors which are branded as NAD. What you can get is quite a nasty sort of acrid kind of smell from capacitors when they dry out. It's not the best smell in the world. And then the large power supply capacitors, if you took them out and you gave them a shake, they kind of rattle, so they will be completely dried out. As with any amplifier, those 2 large electrolytic capacitors work extremely hard. They're effectively the power or energy reservoir for the amplifier. When the amplifier demands the appropriate power, if the capacitors are not good, then it can collapse, which can then cause distortion. And in extreme cases, as I said, the amplifier can remain almost like in protection standby mode. It will not switch on. And then you can also find that you get excessive low hum because the electrolytic smoothing capacitors are no longer performing their function to remove any DC ripple from the DC supply. And then finally, for the repair tutorial, it's as we always conclude. So the amplifier is cleaned, and we also put the amplifier onto a full functional test. Normally 4 hours, typically switching between different inputs, just ensuring that the quality is there in terms of equal audio on each channel, no distortion, and that all of the user controls respond to any request for change for different selections, and all the user controls are nice and quiet in operation. So that sort of brings us to the end of this repair tutorial. So I really appreciate you stopping by. And if you require any guidance, assistance or support, by all means email audioamplifierservicing@aol.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you and provide any support that you may require. So until the next time, I wish you all the very best. Cheers and bye-bye.